Hi, this is Mr. Max. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do polynomials, long division and synthetic division. So we're going to talk about the quotient and the remainder theorem. So I'm going to take a polynomial that is going to be divided by a binomial. So what I'm also doing is I'm putting up 4 questions for you, and I would suggest that at this point you pause the video and then you try to do the questions on your own. Perhaps question 4, you should see there is a little asterisk that I put there, considering that you are dividing this polynomial here by this quadrilateral. And when you do that, you are going to end up not with a number as a remainder, but your remainder in such cases is going to be an expression. Then also something else, when you look at the polynomial and its highest degree, it's to the degree 3, it's a cubic polynomial because the highest power is 3, you do realize that there's one missing as you look at them descending. This is 4x cubed minus 2x squared, but there's no x term, so we are also going to do something there in order to have something as a place holder, like when I add plus 0x, which is the same as adding nothing, but for a placeholder it's important. The same applies with the 2x squared minus 1 here. So the 2x squared, then you don't have an x term, so we're going to add plus 0x. You will see once we get to that particular question. And also something very important, before you attempt to solve the questions, you are supposed to look to see if all the terms are there. If there's no constant term, then you add the 0 there, okay? And once you have everything sorted out, you then also then get your strategy right, and then you can start doing the questions. Now, I also would advise you at this point that it is perhaps better that you try to do all these division problems using long division. Synthetic division that you see here only works, all right, when the divisor here is, let me just highlight that divisor so you can get an idea what I mean. When the divisor here, all right, is the coefficient in front of the x term, if that coefficient in front of x term is 1, so when we are dealing with x plus some number, we can call it k, or x minus some number, we can call it k, then synthetic division may be used, okay? But for all the others, it will be best that you use, like here you see the divisor is 4x plus 3, all right? And here, obviously, you have to do long division for this particular problem. So there are basically 2 questions where you can definitely do synthetic division is these 2, but I would suggest that you get used to using long division, all right? So what I'm also going to do in this video, I'm also going to show you uh, components of what we refer to as the remainder theorem. And the remainder theorem is going to be useful for you when you want to find what the remainder would be, so that when you do your division, you know exactly what the remainder should be. Okay, so let us start with the first polynomial that we are supposed to divide by x minus 3. So I'm going to do this one 2 ways. So what I mean, we take the divisor, the x minus 3, we let it equal to 0. Okay, and then you solve for x. Obviously, you take that negative 3, x is equal to 3. So I'm going to call this polynomial f of x. Right? And I'm going to insert everywhere where I have an x, I'm going to replace that x by the 3 in the polynomial x cubed minus 2x squared minus 14x plus 24. All right, so I'm going to substitute that, and the answer that I'm going to get when I substitute the 3, that answer is going to be my remainder. So what I'm seeing is I'm getting an answer of 0, which means that x minus 3 is a factor of that polynomial. So I'm not going to get a remainder. And once I have that, I can now start either with my synthetic division because the coefficient of x here is 1, or I will do long division. So I'm going to do them both. All right, so let me bring in long division. All the terms are in there, okay? Now what you do is you take your x and you divide it into your x cube. All right, you'll see later on that I will be bringing in some side work. So you take the x cube and then you divide that x cube by the x. The answer that you get, remember this is the same when you are dividing, you are subtracting the indices, right? So we expect you to have something like x squared here, all right? And this x squared that you see here, this x squared is the same x squared that I have right here. So that's the very first thing I do. Now once I have done that, then I take the x squared and I multiply it with the x, and I also multiply it with the minus 3. So when I do that, I will realize that I'm going to end up with certain answers. All right. So if you multiply the x squared by x, you will get x cubed. Okay. And if you multiply the x squared with the negative 3, you are going to end up with minus 3x squared. That's x squared times x gives you x cubed, and x squared times minus 3 gives you minus 3x squared. Now I put brackets here because you're supposed to subtract this expression from whatever you have here under the division sign. All right, so I'm going to draw a line and I'm going to subtract. Now when you do this, the x cubed terms, they cancel. But you must be a bit careful here, and I suggest that you should revisit your directed numbers here. Right? So essentially you have got a minus 1 minus negative 3. If I just take the coefficients, all right? So that double minus in the middle becomes a plus, okay? And you must make sure that you do not make a mistake, because the moment you make a mistake, all right, you're going to have a problem. And then this answer is same as 3 minus 1. So what I'm expecting here, and this is what I'm referring to, I take that minus 1 minus this negative 3 here, okay? And that's how I end up with the positive 2, okay? So you will see that I have 2x squared because it's now like terms. And I bring in that arrow there because I have to bring down the terms again, okay? So before I continue then, so the next thing that I'm going to do, and I indicate in red because my step is going to be in red. So I'm going to take that 2x squared that I have in red, this one here, and I'm going to divide it again by that x that is in my divisor, this particular x right there. So when you divide that by x, you realize that you are going to end up with 2x as an answer, okay? So once you do that, you should get 2x an answer, which should be written here now, okay? All right, so you will see that I'm indicating those specific steps there. And now you see I have the 2x's there. So now I repeat the process again. So I'm going to take the 2x and I'm going to multiply it with x. And 2x times x, for example, will give me 2x squared. Okay? I like to put them in brackets. And I'm going to take that 2x and I'm going to multiply it with negative 3 here. This whole negative 3 that you see there. And I'm going to get negative 6x as an answer. All right, so I'm going to subtract. And again, you need to be careful when you do your subtraction. Obviously, you are dealing with the x squared terms, they cancel each other. But when you have negative 14 minus, all right, your negative 6 here, that is going to give you negative 8 if you check there. So I'm going to have negative 8x. And then I have to bring down that 24 again. Okay. So once I bring that 24 again, I'm going to end up now repeating the process again. All right. So let me just clean this up and bring in the answers that I have typed already from the beginning so that you can see what is it that we are supposed to do. Right, so 2x is going to multiply with both the terms in the divisor. That gives you 2x times x gives you 2x squared, and 2x times -3 gives you the -6 here. So we are supposed then to subtract again. So when we subtract, we get this -8x here. So before we start again dividing that x into the -8x, it will be helpful if you can bring down that 24 there. Now once you do that, the -8 that you see here that I have on top here comes from the -8x divided by the x. All right, and that gives you -8 as an answer. This is the particular x that I'm talking about here. All right, so you repeat that process through and through. All right, and then you get that -8, then you multiply that -8 again by each term on the divisor there. So you're going to multiply -8 times x, which gives you -8x, and I put them in brackets, and negative times a negative gives you positive 24, 8 times 3. Right, so when you subtract, you realize that you are going to get a remainder of 0, because -8x plus 8x gives you 0, and 24 minus 24 gives you 0. So I already know from what I did here, from my remainder theorem, that I need to have a remainder of 0. So on the next slide, I'm going to do synthetic division. Remember what I said, synthetic division only applies when this coefficient of the divisor is 1. You may not try it when it's not, then you have to do long division. Right, so let me bring the problem back here again. So we do the same, we make x in the divisor, we find x, let that whole divisor equal to 0. And then I'm going to draw lines like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the coefficient. So the 3 that you see here comes from my answer here when I let my divisor equal to 0 and I solved the particular question. So the coefficient here of this term is positive 1. The coefficient here is -1. The coefficient here of the x term is -14. And also 24 is the constant is there. So that is what you do. You work with the coefficients. And then the very first thing you do is you bring down this first one down. So you bring it down, and that is the very first thing that you need to do. So now we do is we are going to multiply the 3 times the 1. And 3 times 1 gives me 3. And now we're going to add here. So we're going to add the -1 plus 3 gives you obviously 2. And then we're going to start again by multiplying that 2 times the 3. And 2 times 3 gives you 6. And again, we add. When we add -14 plus 6, it gives us -8. And then again, we multiply again the -3 times the -8, or the 3 times the -8 rather. And 3 times 8 gives you -24. And once you add this one, you realize that you get 0 here, which is our remainder. So these are now the coefficients of my quotient, the answer that I get from division. This is x raised to the power of 3, so our answer will be 1 less degree than that. It's going to be 1x squared plus 2x minus 8 with a remainder of 0. And when you compare this answer with the previous one, you will see that the answers are exactly the same. But I must emphasize it only works if the coefficient of the divisor here in front of this term is 1. Then you may use synthetic division. But I will still say it does you no harm to try to work and do long division. All right, let's bring in the second question here. We have got 8x cubed plus 2x squared minus 5x plus 9 should be divided by 4x plus 3. Long division comes into mind. And what I like to do, I like to label that polynomial as f of x as a function of x. And the reason I do that is I'm going to take this 4x plus 3, let it equal to 0. And then I'm going to solve for x. and I get x is equal to negative 3 over 4. And I'm going to take this negative 3 over 4 and I'm going to substitute it in my polynomial everywhere where I have an x so that I can already find what my remainder should be. So I know if I do my long division that I'm going to bring up here, I must eventually end up getting 10.5 as a remainder. So this is an indicator and also one way that you can already get a mark, because normally a question like this carries 4 marks if there is a remainder. Right, so I'm going to bring in side work so that you can see from what I did in the previous question. So we take the 8x cubed, the one that I have in red here, we divide it by the 4x, so we get 2x squared. And that 2x squared is what we have up there. And now we multiply, remember, that 2x squared with the 4x, and we are going to multiply it also with the 3. So we're going to multiply 2x squared times 4x and 2x squared times 3. And once you do that, you're going to end up with 8x cubed plus 6x squared. All right, so once we have that, we are supposed then to subtract. So remember, when you are subtracting the terms here, the x cubed terms, they cancel, but 2x minus 6x is negative 4x squared. So before I start dividing the 4x into this red one here, I must bring down this minus 5x here. And then I'm going to start again with my side work. So I take the minus 4x squared and I divide it by the 4x. And once I do that, I get negative x as an answer. And it comes all the way up here at the divisor. And then the process starts again where you now multiply again. So you say negative x times 4x gives you negative 4x in brackets squared, and negative x times 3 gives you this negative 3 here. So I put them in brackets and you are supposed to subtract. Now, you do realize the square terms will cancel, and negative 5 minus negative 3 is negative 2x. So before I divide the 4x into the minus 2x, it will be wise to bring down that 9 there. So I'm going to bring in my side work. So I'm taking the 2x, negative 2x, and I divide it by 4x. Well, I'm going to get negative 0.5 or negative a half. All right, so I'm going to put that decimal up there. So you can now multiply negative a half times 4x. You're going to get negative 2x, and negative a half times 3 gives you negative 1.5. And now you're going to subtract, and you are going to be left 9 minus negative 1.5 is the same as 9 plus 1.5, which is 10.5, which is the same answer that we got when I was applying the remainder theorem. Right, so this brings me to question 3. Also, you're supposed to do either long division in this question, or you can use synthetic division. Well, I'm using long division, but before I do that, I want to find already what my remainder would be. So I take x minus 4, let it equal to 0, and then I solve for x, x is equal to 4. So this 4 here will be substituted into my polynomial everywhere where I have an x. Now, if I do that, you punch it in on your calculator, you realize that you get an answer of 9. So I know that my remainder should be 9. So I already have a mark here for my remainder. So I write down everything as it's supposed to be. And I'm going to start again with x cubed in red divided by x. So I'm going to bring in my side work. X cubed divided by x gives me this x squared, and that's what's going to come up here. And then I'm going to multiply that x squared with the x. That's giving you x cubed. And x squared multiplied with the minus 4 gives you minus 4x squared. So please make sure that you don't get confused. You take this x squared, you multiply it, all right, with that, and you also multiply it with this whole negative, all right, 4, and you get this particular answers that you have there inside the bracket. And I suggest that you put them inside the bracket. Right, so when we do our subtraction, we are going to be left with 9x squared. So I put it in red because I'm going to divide that x into the 9x squared. But before I do that, I must bring down the minus 32x. So I'm going to go back to my side work then. So I'm going to take the 9x squared and I'm going to divide it by x, and I'm going to be left with 9x, which comes all the way up to here. And can you also see that the quotient, the terms are also decreasing? That is x squared, this is x to the power 1. So I do expect a constant, the number, to be also following after that 9x. Right, so when you multiply 9x times x, you get 9x squared, and 9x times negative 4 gives you negative 36. Then when you subtract, you must be careful here. This is the same as minus 32 plus 36, because a negative and a negative gives you 36. So for those of you who can't follow the numbers, it's negative 32, then it's minus negative 36. All right, so ultimately you should know that the two minuses in the middle there, they will create a plus here, okay, where you are adding those terms in the middle. And the moment you are adding, you're going to have an answer of 4. That is how I get the 4x. Right, so now I'm going to divide that 4x again that I indicated in red there. I'm going to divide it by the x on my side here, but before I do that, I'm bringing down my negative 7. So 4x that is here, I'm going to divide it by x, and when I do that, I get 4 as an answer that come all the way up here. And now you multiply 4 times x, and you also multiply 4 times negative 4, you get this expression. You subtract, you are going to get negative 7 plus 16 is giving you 9 as an answer, which we already determined from our work with the remainder theorem. Right, question 4, you have to be a bit careful. So what I did is here, I have added that 0x, so it's just for place holding, and also did the same at the divisor. So you have to then use long division. Right, so now I have got everything. So essentially we're going to use the 2x squared into the 4x cubed. It's just going to be the first term of the divisor that we are going to divide, as we did with the previous one here. So if I take the 4x cubed and I divide it by the 2x squared, I get 2x as an answer, which is all the way up here. And then I'm going to take this 2x and I'm going to multiply it with each term, and this is what you need to do. You multiply that 2x with each term, you multiply it with 2x squared, you multiply it with the 0x, and you multiply it with negative 1. Once you do that, you're going to add 4x cubed plus 0x, because 2x times 0x is just 0, but we put 0x squared there for the placeholder so that the x squares can be sorted. And then obviously 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. All right, so now we are going to subtract, and what we are left with is negative 2x squared, and here 0 minus negative 2 is the same as positive 2x. So before I divide this 2x squared that I have in the divisor into this minus 2x squared, I'm first going to bring down this negative 3 here. And then I'm going to go back to my side work where I take the minus 2x squared and I divide it by the 2x squared there. I get negative 1 as an answer, which come all the way up there. So there's nothing following that. So now you're going to multiply this negative 1. You're going to multiply 2x squared with that. You're going to multiply the 0x times negative 1 and negative 1 times negative 1. So if you do that, you end up with this expression 2x squared plus 0x plus 1. So now everything cancels on the square term, and negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. And our remainder is 2x minus 4. Remember I said whenever you are dividing by a quadratic like this, you expect the answer to be linear, which is an expression like that. All right, so I hope that you have picked up on a few pointers. I suggest you go back and start the video again, and then you look at the questions that you have in your textbooks that you are using at school and so on, and do more exercises in order for you to be confident with this work.